This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Tonight, the second night of Chol HaMoed, Yahrtzeit Tishri, is the Yahrtzeit of the great tzaddik, Nachman of Breslov. The last words of Rav Nachman, he said, Ani nitzachti va'anatzayach. And this was a remez that he would pass away on the Ushpizin of Moshe Rabbeinu, which is the Sphira of Netzach. The Satmar Rebbe frequently said that of all the great tzaddikim, Rav Nachman of Breslov, his words were directed to our generation, Baruch HaKodesh, understanding, recognizing exactly the challenges and the needs of specifically our generation. It's amazing that the Chazon Ish, and this is recorded by Rabbi Michal Stern in the Sefer Gedolei Hadoros, once told Rabbi Avram Horowitz, when he was a mashgiach in Yeshivas Tfars Tzion, that he should learn with the Bachrim in the Yeshiva, Likutim from the Sfarim of Rav Nachman of Breslov, the Ois Tzadik, so they should be Nischazek Be'amunas Chachamim. And it's rather remarkable that of all the teachings of Rav Nachman, the one that is most well known, the teaching that Breslov is known for, and the teaching that Rav Nachman is most known for, is when he said, Mitzvah Gedoyla Liyos Besimcha Tamid. Now, this seems to be so simple and obvious, but it's not even unanimously maintained. In Volozhin, they didn't necessarily promote this ideology that there's a mitzvah always to be happy, but rather, Ivdu es Hashem besimcha, it has to dafka be simcha shel mitzvah. But the most well-known, iconic teaching of Rav Nachman, he writes in the Likutei Moharan, Tinyana, Ois Chav Daled, mitzvah gedoyla lihiyos besimcha tamid. Ulhisgaber, to strengthen yourself, laharchik ha'atzvos v'hamar shchara b'chol koichai, to distance yourself from sadness and despondency. He says all illness, all sickness, all come from some kind of lack of equilibrium in the area of simcha. He says there are 10 kinds of song which emanate from simcha, and they correspond to 10 types of illness, and all sadness is the root cause of all chaylaim. And then he ends off a haklal, shetzarch lezgaber ma'oid b'chol hakoiches, one has to prevail, one has to be strengthened oneself with all their ability, liyos ach sameach tamid, to be ach sameach. Ach sameach is the lashon Torah uses by the Yom Tov of Sukkos. He says, Kitava adam limshech atzil marsh chayra v'atzvas. Human nature is to reduce oneself to sadness. Human nature is not to always be happy. It requires work. It requires strengthening oneself. In other words, status quo, the human being will lower itself into sadness, and therefore one has to strengthen themselves to be ach sameach, and not allow the nature just to drag you into atzvus, machmas pigei mikri azman, because of the vicissitudes of the time. V'chol adam mole yisurim, everyone has difficulties, everyone in life has troubles. Al kein tzarach lahachriach esad v'kagah, you need to force yourself, you need to push yourself. Lios b'simcha tamid, u'sameach esad v'chal shayuchal. Nachman says you have to make yourself happy with whatever you can. Even in shtus, he writes. He says, even though having a broken heart is also good, but that's only for some time during the day. You should dedicate Ezeh Shabbayim to have a Shivrain Leiv. But the rest of the day, Tzarech Liyos B'Simcha. He says, from a broken heart, you could come to depression. More than through Simcha, you could come to Hailalas. Meaning, it's a greater danger that having a Leiv Nishbar could bring you to depression than being Besimcha could bring to Leitzanas and Hailalas. Therefore, Tzarech Liyos B'Simcha Tamid. Now, I think it's pretty remarkable and certainly of note, maybe it's obvious. There's a great teaching of Reb Tzadok HaKohen. The pasuk says in Koheles, Divrei Chachamim Kadar Vanois Uchemas Moros Netuin Ba'alei Asupos Nitnu Meroy Echad. Divrei Chachamim Kadar Vanois. The words of the sages are like pegs. And the Medrash asks, when are the words of the sages like pegs? On the day they pass away. On the day of the passing of a sage, that is when their teaching is ingrained in the hearts of their Talmidim and the hearts of Klal Yisrael. Therefore, it is certainly not a coincidence that the most iconic teaching of Rav Nachman is Mitzvah Gedolah Liyos B'Simcha Tamid, or what he writes, Liyos Ach Sameach Tamid. And when was this teaching ingrained in the heart of the Jewish people? On the Yom Tov of Hayisa Ach Sameach. It's not a coincidence that Hashgacha has it that on the Yom Tov, the Hayisa Ach Samech, by the way, the Abarbanel learns the pasuk of Hayisa Ach Samech is that if one is happy on Sukkos, it's a Havtacha, one will be happy the whole year. Therefore, on the day of the passing of Rav Nachman, that is the time when the great teaching of Rav Nachman is ingrained in the hearts of Klal Yisrael, and therefore it specifically occurred on the Yom Tov of Simcha, Zman Simchaseinu, of all the Yomim Tovim. Sukkos is Zman Simchaseinu. By Sukkos it says to be b'simcha 3 times. Usmachtem lefnei Hashem leikeichem v'samachta b'chagecha v'hayisach sameach. 3 times it says simcha. So on this day, the Yom Tov of Simcha was the day that the great limud of Rav Nachman is transmitted and ingrained into the hearts of the Jewish people. Suchusay yagein aleinu v'al kol Yisrael.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.